In this video, we're going to talk about identifying the slope and the y-intercept from a linear equation. So before we can do that, we need to first talk about slope-intercept form. The slope-intercept form of an equation, it looks like such: y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope, it's the coefficient to the x term, and b is the y-intercept, meaning that's where a linear equation will cross the x-axis. So when we're talking about slope-intercept form, it means it's solved for y. The equation is solved for y. Y is all alone by itself on one side of the equation, and then the x variable is on the other side with a constant, which the x variable might not be there, right? Because this could be 0, and then you just have y equaling a constant. That is also true. B might not be there. B could be 0 as well, because it could cross through the origin. When we want to identify the slope and y-intercept, first we have to get y alone. On this first example, it's in the right form. Y equals negative 3x plus 1. So we don't have to do any work here. We just have to be able to pull out the right information. So since y is all by itself on one side, I know that the part with the x, the coefficient to the x term, that is going to be the slope. So the coefficient, meaning the slope here, will be negative 3. If I want to find the y-intercept, it's the constant term, meaning the piece without a variable. So we have our y variable, our x variable, and our constant. There's no variable here. So that number is the y-intercept. We also label that with a b. So I could say b equals 1, because it's a positive 1. And that will give us the ordered pair 0, 1, since that is where it crosses the y-axis. Why don't you guys go ahead and try the next example? Looking at this next example, we can see that it's not in the correct form. Y is not by itself. So that is our first step here. Let me go ahead and grab a different color marker for this problem. Our first step is to get y alone, since it's not in the proper form. I'm going to start by getting rid of the x. So I'm going to subtract x from both sides. Don't lose this negative here. And just to keep it in the right form, I'm going to keep the x first. So minus x, and then this was a positive 2, so plus 2. Y is not quite alone. I need to divide both sides by a negative 3. And that will leave me with y equals, this is a negative 1x, so I could put this 1 here if I need it. So I've got negative 1x divided by a negative 3. The negatives divide out, it ends up positive, and it's 1 over 3. That 3 is in the denominator. It's going to stay in the denominator. And then over here, I have a positive 2 divided by a negative 3, which will end up negative 2/3. So if you didn't catch that on your attempt, you must get y alone before you can pull out the the y-intercept and the slope. Now that it's in the proper form, I can pull out the right information. Looking at this, I see with the x term, that coefficient is our slope. In this case, m will be 1/3. And the constant term, our b, will be a negative 2/3. Or I could write it as the ordered pair 0, negative 2/3. Don't mix up the x and y. This is the y-intercept, so it needs to go in the y value of that coordinate. And there you have it. So if you have a linear equation, first make sure it's in the correct form, meaning it needs to be solved for y. Y is all by itself on one side. And then you pull out the proper information. So the coefficient to the x term is our slope, and the constant term is our y-intercept.